Hello everybody, Elias here. Um, as always, I just go when the Spirit moves me and just do a video. I have no idea what I'm going to really be talking about. May enter into my heart maybe just 5 minutes before I start a video. I wanted to make something clear. There's different sorts of mindsets out there. I wanted to make it clear what exactly it is that I'm believing here. And I'm believing, and I'm talking a lot in these videos about the true power of grace and the true freedom we have in Christ, and I'm not at all suggesting permissiveness. I'm not at all teaching that that God is somehow tolerant of sin. He of course he wasn't tolerant of sin. Christ died on the cross. So how tolerant of sin could he have been? The thing is, lots of Christians are, when they hear discussions about grace, there's one group who, they hear that, and this is what they hear. They hear, wait a minute, grace as a license to sin, permissiveness. Oh, you could just do anything you want, any kind of sin you want, and you're still getting into heaven. God's still got to save you. And how can you go on like that if there's no chance that you could lose your salvation? How could you go on like that? You'll just basically do anything you want. Now, in the flesh, certainly that's possible, but we are not in the flesh when we're talking about being in Christ. And when you're trusting in the victorious work of Christ, you are trusting in the Spirit. You're not trusting in the flesh. Just like the ancient prophet said, cursed is every man that trusts in mankind, that makes flesh his strength. I do not advocate making flesh your strength. That would be silly. Make the Lord your strength, for He is victorious over sin. That's all I ever taught people. So I don't want anybody out there starting to say, wow, Elias is teaching grace as a license to sin. Paul had to go up against this in his day. When he was teaching grace, the law keepers came at him too, about grace as a license to sin. And what was Paul's answer? No, because if you're giving yourself over to sin, you're also giving yourself over to the law and binding yourself up in something that's not working because of the weakness of your flesh. And you're resisting the grace of Christ, and you're disrespecting the cross and everything that He accomplished on it. And how could you succeed doing that? I never advocated such a thing. Now, if there are some out there who teach that God is simply just tolerant of all sins, you can just do anything you want, hey, let's party, and in the end He's got to save you because you crossed some line one day and said the sinner's prayer, and you accepted Jesus into your heart, and He's got to save you now no matter what you do. That's ridiculous too. There are extremes, folks. There are extremes. And I thought it would be helpful to explain that I am definitely not going to that other extreme. You get the law keepers on one hand who say, no, you have to do something. You got to do something to present before the Lord and show the Lord that you're serious about turning away from sin, and you got to obey. You must obey. you know. And it's true, but why do we obey? We obey because Christ obeyed first. We love him because he loved us first. So everything that we do is flowing out of the righteousness of Christ. It's not flowing out of us apart from him. So I see it as useless to go and tell somebody, you got to do this, you got to accomplish that. No, I don't tell them that anymore. I used to. Instead, now I tell them, you need to believe the entire gospel and how great it really is, and what an accomplishment Christ really is victorious in. He reigns triumphantly over sin. And because he reigns triumphantly over sin, then in God's eyes, sin must be dealt with. Right? So he told us to walk by faith in that and not by sight. So what do? We saw that sin was in our flesh. We saw sin, and then we kind of like said, well, I guess it's not dealt with after all. I got to do something about it. Well, then we set about trying to do something about it. We struggled with the sin directly in the flesh, struggling in the flesh, thinking we had to do this to show God that we were serious. When the Lord all along only wanted us to know you're missing the whole point. You're missing the entire point. Your victory, your final victory over the sin in your flesh is going to come from you receiving and experiencing all there is to experience of the life of Christ and his righteousness, and experiencing all there is to experience from true heavenly grace, which is the power to be what you ought to be, to experience true godly love, so that you also may love like God. He doesn't command that you obey him first so that he'll love you. He said, when somebody loves him, it's a natural result of him having loved them first. And that's why they obey. In everything you have to put Christ first, his righteousness, his love, his desire, his will, his victory. It's not about us. That's all I've been teaching. It's not about us. Paul, the Apostle Paul, had to learn that. In Romans 7, he suffered, I don't know how long. Could have been for years, knocking his head against the same brick wall. Wow, here I am, I'm supposed to belong to Christ now. And I don't really want to sin, but I find that I'm sinning anyway. What's going on, Lord? This is terrible. How could I call myself a Christian? He's going through that. He went through that experience, people, and he explained to us what the Lord revealed to him about it. Why won't we hear? Why won't we listen to him? He wrote all that to the churches. We had the benefit of seeing it in our Bibles, hopefully, so we won't go through the same traumatic experience that he did. And yet, here we go, going through the same thing that he did. And so the law keepers who there's two reasons why they don't receive this. One is they simply don't believe the entire gospel. They don't really believe that sin is taken care of. When they hear me saying sin is taken care of, they say, well, wait a minute, I just saw it yesterday. Well, your mouth said it yourself. I saw it yesterday. You're walking by sight then, right? So what are you going to believe? What you saw yesterday or what Jesus said yesterday? Somebody's lying. Somebody's telling the truth. Let God be true and every man a liar. Okay. Again, I got to send you to Romans 7. Read it again. Read it 300 times if you have to. And let it sink into your heart. Think about what Paul was going through. Think about his experience. You're going through it yourself. A lot of you know and can empathize with what Paul was going through. And you know it's a hard thing. You know about that, feeling miserable half the time, thinking you're disappointing the Lord. You're not measuring up. You know? You're not even sure. You have those secret little thoughts in the back of your heart. Wow, maybe I'm not going to make it. If I were to die today, would I even make it? Terrible thoughts. Why would anybody be persecuted for simply stating the truth when they say, the Lord your God doesn't want you thinking like that? Why would he want you thinking like that? Is that what he came to save you for? He came because he loved you. He didn't even really come because to save your skin. He didn't say. He came because he loved you. First and foremost, God is love. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, right? For God so loved the world. That was the first reason. If you were to ask the Lord himself, why'd you do it, Lord? Why'd you send Jesus? Because of his love. God is love. And we weren't deserving of that love. None of us, mankind, humankind, was not deserving of that love. And they got it. They got mercy, and then they got grace. So all I'm trying to do is point them towards Christ. I'm just trying to show them more of the benefits of this grace that they've been holding themselves back from for no good reason other than to think that they have to do something themselves. Self-effort, which we've gone over this, it's law. But Christ fulfilled the law. He was the author of that law. He's the only one that lived it perfectly while he was in a human body. So it would seem reasonable to say, well, we need to go to the guy who did it right. The only one who did it right. Jesus Christ. The living Word, right? And if he's living in us, he's living right. And if we understand and experience his true love for us and his forgiveness of us, and we experience that, we experience it in such a way where it starts to sink into our heart and deep into our soul, then what is our response going to be? We're going to sin less and less, and we're going to love him back more and more. I mean, in the face of all that, all the power of the grace and the love of Christ, how could you possibly go on being the same guy? You can't. Then you're going to understand. It was the righteousness of Christ in me that overcomes sin in this flesh, that mortifies the deeds in my flesh. And I'm glad I know that now. See, now, there are some that do go to the extreme, and they just say, well, you know, all you got to do is say that sinner's prayer, yada, yada, yada. You can go rob a bank afterwards. God's still got to save you. Or you can go be a criminal for the rest of your life. You could, you know. if you're really believing the whole gospel, and it's sinking into your heart, how can you be those things anymore? You should start to be transformed into the image of the Son, right? Because God is not looking for reformation. He's wanting transformation. He wants to transform us into the image of the Son of his love. So, what do we have to do? Believe, receive, and experience the truth that sets us free, so that we will walk freely. That's what I've been teaching. And I don't want anybody saying anymore anything else about, wow, grace is a license to sin. That's just ridiculous. It is not grace as a license to sin. The other reason the law keepers say things like that is because of control. The Pharisees said it because of control, right? And folks, I gotta go now. Time out. My time's up, so God bless you.